It's now time for the Billy C. Show, part of the BillyCBoxing.com network.
And we're coming to you live from the Billy C Studios in Lake George, New York. I'm Bill Calogero, and it's time for the Billy C Show. Good morning, good day, good evening, whenever you're watching, whenever you're listening. I hope you're doing okay today. Today's show is being brought to us in part by, you guessed it, my book. Tom Molyneux, From Bondage to Baddest Man on the Planet, is available right now where all good books are sold, and you can get a copy of this book, well, right now, while you're watching or listening to this very show. Just visit barnesandnoble.com or amazon.com. Or if you want a signed copy, just drop me an email, billy@talkinboxing. I'll spell it for you. That's TALKINBOXING.com. Today's show is also being brought to us in part by the website, BillyCBoxing.com. Check it out. All the latest and greatest news the sport of boxing has to offer, plus any updates on the show. And finally, today's show is being brought to us in part by the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame 2025 inductees that I was honored to be part of. I got one of the best Christmas presents I could have asked for when Steve Canton gave me a call the day after Christmas or whatever. I think it was the day after Christmas, maybe the second day after. And he informed me that I was inducted into the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame for 2025. And I couldn't have been more honored. It was something that I actually had dreamed about for a long time. And all the people involved with the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame election committee made it possible. I was down there for the official announcement, which we have a copy of on our YouTube page. I want to give a special thanks to my man Jose Cello Alonso, Orlando Fernandez, Dalia Duran, Roberto Duran's daughter, who's actually, I just see popped into the chat room. She she keeps us all in line. I'll be honest with you. She's in charge of all this stuff. She actually told me I messed up the other day when I said about the Fistcast, she's, I have notes. You got to pay more attention, Billy C. I was like, okay. So she's great. I love her. I can't wait to see her again in June. And of course, my son-in-law, Louis, who came down with me. We had a little adventure on the way home. But in any event, I hope that all of you guys can come down for June 20, 21, and 22. It's a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, June 20th through the 22nd in St. Pete at the Hilton. Just visit the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame. That's www.floridaboxinghalloffame.com and be part of it, man. I want you guys to come on down. Hey, listen. In my opinion, you have the you have the International Boxing Hall of Fame, and then you have the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame. That's the way I look at the value of them. I remember when Butch Flansburgh was first starting it, and I dreamed about it, and all the powers that be made it possible. So please come and join us. It's going to be a great 3-day event. All kinds of stuff going on. Just visit the website, FloridaBoxingHallOfFame.com, for all the information on that. On today's show, we're going to talk about, I think we're going to talk about boxing today because, it's what we do, But a couple of things in the news that I want to discuss. But first, let's get him on the stage here. Well, we'll get him on the screen anyway. My man, Alex Pierpaoli, joins us. Let's see. Does this sound work?
Hello, Billy.
Hey, it sound works. And it was all my problem when that happened. But
happy Thursday.
Hey, happy Thursday. Great to be back. Can you believe that this is actually the 22nd year of the Talking Boxing with Billy C show?
Very impressive.
It kind of is. Hopefully we can continue moving on, or if not, this may very well be the last year. I'm running out of gas, I think. But I know Alex is laughing because I've said that the last 5 years,
You're like
But
Tyson Fury.
I'm worse than Tyson Fury. I'm like Sugar Ray Leonard.
Yeah, this is gonna be it. This is gonna be it.
Yeah.
Let's do another one.
Well, I tell you, the difference between me and them is people throwing money at them. I'm throwing money at myself. I don't. But give a shout out to Joel. He's in the chat room, my man, Coach. I think he put the link to the little acceptance speech that we had. But I'll tell you, Alex, I tell you, when Steve Canton called me, I was extremely excited. I love the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame, and I can't wait to get down there for the weekend, man. It was quite the honor, I'll be honest.
Yeah, congratulations. And I really enjoyed what you had to say. I did. I don't spend as much time on social media as I used to, but I did hop on there and I saw your acceptance speech. Well, not the official acceptance speech, but I enjoyed what you had to say. I think you were right on about the history of the sport and how that's something that it's something that's so, it's probably, as much as the modern fan doesn't really watch it, and it's never been more accessible, because you could spend time every single night on YouTube getting watching some of the greatest fights in history, and that's pretty awesome to be able to do that.
I tell you something, first of all, that was a total impromptu situation. I had no idea that I had to, say anything. So I wasn't really prepared. And like I said to everyone, that was
that was pretty good. It's like you didn't even have to spit out your gum. You were ready.
I wasn't, though. That was the whole funny part.
You sounded ready. That's great.
John Musciunas said to me, it sounds so different. And I said, John, I really was not prepared. I didn't realize it until I'll be honest, I didn't realize I was going to have to say anything till they gave the first award out. And they're like, oh, and I'm like, oh, that means I'm going to have to say something too, So, but I was real glad that Chevelle Hallbuck came down in support. So I was glad that she was there. But I promised everyone that I will have something to say come June. But that is something that means a lot to me. I'm glad you picked up on it. I just feel that, I mean, look, I'm a football fan and I'm a baseball fan. And I do believe that people need to know the history to a degree for those team sports. But when it comes to boxing, and maybe that's the boxing purist in me, I just feel that the fighters of yesteryear, they paved the way for all the fighters today. And the worst part of it, Alex, is, the worst part is I feel a lot of the younger fans just don't, they just don't go and do the research. But, I think the worst part is that today, with all the advances we have in training techniques and nutrition, et cetera, that we could conceivably have the very best fighters ever, in the sport of boxing. And I, despite those physical advantages, well, they definitely don't have a mental advantage of the fighters from yesteryear. They were way tougher. But I think despite those advantages that they have, the lack of willingness, to prove that you're the best in the ring is what prevents it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that, there's a guy I know that I do a boxing podcast with who always says, talks about today's generations. It's like, and he says to me, Alex, they got trophies for nothing. And I think he's right, because I think that's, especially when it comes to boxing, because it is something that boxing is the kind of sport that every single day, every single day, you have to do what you do not feel like doing and do it like you love it. And I think that a lot of people, don't, and, it's easy for me to say that, I'm sitting here in my living room, I'm not waking up at 4 a.m. and running, but it does seem to be the difference between today's boxers and yesteryear's boxers. That's not to say there weren't exceptions, of course, but I do think that's there is a sort of mental and emotional toughness that seems to be lacking. Now that's not to say that I'm one of those guys that jumps on fighters like if they quit, because I do think that sometimes commentators absolutely go overboard with that. There was recently, I can't remember now, the fight where I did think that ESPN, Joe Tessitore, and those guys were going way too far in how they were questioning the sincerity and in why the fighter quit. It's completely slipping my mind now who it was, but we're not in their bodies, so you don't know. This is an extraordinarily dangerous sport, so you don't know why a guy quits in a fight. That said, I think there's also examples like when Daniel Dubois, the idea, and I think that was one of the things about this year is that he sort of exorcised those demons of being called a quitter against Usyk. To me, I don't call him a quitter against Usyk. He was in there against one of the very best fighters on earth, and it was clear that the walls were closing in around him, and he gave up in that fight. But I think he's recovered from that. So I do think that, that kind of thing can be used. It's a double-edged sword, because I do think that there is a lack of discipline in some fighters in terms of the overall ethic. But in terms of in a fight, you got to be careful about when you use that Q word.
Yeah, especially in boxing. I mean, in MMA, there's no problem if you tap out. It's the same thing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I just to touch base, the mental part. As society, we're mentally weak today compared to yesteryear, even going back 50 years. I mean, today, you got to get a hug. Today, I know New York State. Anyway, they accept. I need a mental day off. Hello, boss. Yeah, I'm not coming in today. What are you, sick? You got a personal problem? Actually, I just need a mental day off today. And it's like, well, what? WTF? But anyway,
it reminds me of when George Costanza decided he was trying to get out of his upcoming wedding, and he decided, well, I'm just going to cry.
Well,
and it worked. He was like, I can't do it in March.
Yeah, but remember he was trying to say,
I'll do it tomorrow. I promise I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah, but when he was going to get married, wasn't he trying to save money, and he got the invitations that she licked and died?
That was the way to get out of it. Yeah.
But anyway, one of the main thing I wanted to talk about. There's a lot of stuff we're going to talk about today that obviously I couldn't prep you for. But I've been seeing all over social media, different websites, different people on multiple platforms about Terence Crawford and Canelo Alvarez having the fight signed, sealed, and delivered. All right. Now, I have not seen, me personally, I have not seen any official announcement. All right. I even heard or saw a rumor that it's set up for September. Or, and I'm saying to myself, well, okay, then who's Canelo going to fight in May? Because he's been consistently fighting, Cinco de Mayo in May, and I'm sure that they don't need, another 8.5 months to prepare for a fight. But I don't know. Maybe that's more aging time for Terence Crawford. My question is the fight going to happen or what? I mean, I am pro. I want the fight to happen.
Yeah.
And I personally think that, look, I can't stand the attitude of the fanboys, the ones that, Canelo is like a god, or Terence Crawford's fans, the fanboys, he's like a god, and all of that. I look at it realistically, and from a style point of view, and I'm not discrediting any one of these two fighters, but from a style point of view and they're both mentally strong. Canelo's obviously physically bigger. You would have to assume he's stronger. But when it comes to boxing skill, and I'm not taken away from Canelo because, at times when I start to think that, oh, maybe he's not as good, he proves me wrong. I'm very respectful of his resume. I know as of late, you could be critical of him with the people he's choosing over other potential opponents. I feel that Terence Crawford has not had an easy go at all. He was the B side in the beginning. But when those two fight, if they ever do, Alex, my honest opinion is that Terence Crawford's going to win the fight. He's going to win the fight on a decision. I've seen comments, there's no way he can win a decision against Canelo. And I'm assuming they're referring to unfair judging. But I don't think Crawford could knock out Canelo. But I do think he could steal the fight. I do believe that that Crawford has the hand speed, the mean streak that we all know he possesses, and the footwork to win on the scorecards. I mean, what's your initial thought?
Well, first of all, I think it should be mentioned that in terms of what, like you were saying, in terms of like mental toughness, we're talking about two guys who totally smash the first part of what we were just discussing, because when it comes to emotional, mental discipline, these two guys are like the pinnacle of the sport.
They're the exception. They're not the norm. Absolutely. They're not the norm, right?
Right. And I think, just to give you an example, if you've seen, and it's not boxing, but just to give you an example of like Terence Crawford, not only him, but his whole family. Remember from a couple of years ago, his little girl was in that race, that track and field race, where she lost her shoe right out of the gate and had to stop and put her shoe back on, and then hit the gas and won the race. I mean, that's just, who does that? That's the kind of thing where it's like, my shoe fell off. I'll get him another day. Nah, I think I'm going to win this fight. I think I'm going to win this race. That just gives you an idea of that family and what discipline means in that household. Yeah, I would love to see the fight. I think it's definitely an oddity, because you're talking about a guy going up 2 weight classes. Yeah, because he's junior middleweight now, so they'd probably fight like at a 165, 168. So yes, it would be very interesting to see what does a super middleweight Terence Crawford, how does he fight?
Well, let's right. Hold on one second. You mentioned 2 weight classes, but I don't even think he's a legitimate junior middleweight, to be honest.
Yeah, he could. Yeah, I mean, he probably does walk around at like 160. I mean, it's hard to know. I mean, he always comes in incredible shape. So it's not, I don't know. When you come in like that in incredible shape, you do wonder, well, how much, but these guys do so much with water and fluids and stuff, and they're able to dehydrate, get on the scale, and then rehydrate. So you might not visibly see. It's not like he's got a lot of flesh on him like a Tyson Fury, at all. But I don't know. Of course, the size is a big deal. Sorry, I got a lot of feline activity going on over here. What's it called? I do think that, yeah, I would agree with you. I kind of think I would favor Terence Crawford in that fight. And I know that probably sounds crazy to a lot of people, but I would love to see it happen. It does seem like a fight like that, they're going to want to marinate it. So September seems more likely than May, even though May is pretty far. I mean, it's 5 months away, but because he has to bulk up a bit, maybe September makes more sense. But that would be the question. Would it be in Saudi Arabia or would it be in Vegas?
Well, Turkey Al Rashid is there's another thing I'm going to talk about a little later. They're signing fights, good fights that aren't necessarily having to be fought in Saudi Arabia. His promotional team. I personally like the fights in Saudi Arabia because they're on early, and I love watching a fight card that starts at 10 o'clock in the morning, goes till 7, 8 o'clock at night. I absolutely love it.
It's wonderful. And I think because we're both old enough to remember the days of like ABC's Wide World of Sports, when you'd see a fight at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and
right.
then you could still do something that evening and then be in bed by 10.
No, I hear you. You get these fights here in the U.S. and I think, not to get off topic, but I think that that's one of the reasons that boxing has slipped, because the time that they air the big fights, but bottom line,
they're not helping themselves.
They're not helping themselves. Especially, hey, listen, I'm in my feety pajamas normally by 6, 7 o'clock at night. But then again, I'm up at 2:30, 3 in the morning. I just can't sleep. Yeah, I know it's ridiculous. Yeah, did you just get the image of me in feety pajamas in your head?
I love that. I love that, Billy C.
Yeah. But I think this fight, I think, the two things that make this fight on Canelo's side, it's all about the money. So obviously he's getting a lot of money. There was a lot of risk for Canelo should he lose the fight. And should he win the fight, people are just going to say, well, Crawford is too small. You beat up a much smaller guy. So I could see the point that he was making early on when this discussion started 2 years ago. Really, it started. But the money makes all of that go away. But when it comes to Terence Crawford, I know, he wants as much money as possible. But this is also a greatness thing for Terence Crawford that he could achieve by winning the fight or even making it really close. Even if the fight ended in a draw, I think historically, I think that it helps Terence Crawford much more. And if he loses the fight, the fact that he challenged himself to go in, it's more of a win-win situation for TC than it is for Canelo, in my opinion.
Right. And I think both these guys are at the point where they are careful about, they're both good businessmen. Of course, the edge, because he's just been almost like a corporation for longer, it goes to Canelo. But excuse me, Terence Crawford has been very good at marketing himself and, the fights he chooses and stuff. If anything, my biggest knock on him is I wish he was more active, just because he's it's such a joy to watch him fight. It's unfortunate seeing him fight so infrequently.
But wait, a lot of that was Top Rank's fault when he was signed with Top Rank.
Not like he's avoiding anyone, so it's not like it's not like I'm saying he should be fighting and this is the guy he should be fighting. You know what I mean?
Like everyone says about Canelo,
right? And I think you can only say that about Canelo with the Benavidez fight. But Canelo,
I don't even think we're going to talk about Benavidez a little later, but. I think
Benavidez has sort of grown past him in a bit. And I think the other thing about it, that fight's dangerous. We know we have the Bivol fight to look at. Canelo really, really struggled with a bigger, aggressive, busy guy. I think that's the other thing too that makes the Crawford fight interesting, is that stylistically, it's an interesting matchup because you have in Crawford sort of this aggressive boxer puncher guy who, if he hurts you, he's going to take you out, versus Canelo, who's sort of more of a counter puncher, an explosive counter puncher in bursts. So I think the clash of stylistically, it's going to be a fun fight to watch if it happens. And I think in terms of greatness in the sport, it's 2 pound for pound guys clashing. And I think that's, of course, always fascinating to see. So I do think that the thing about it is that it's very possible to see Canelo have a hard time catching him because Crawford is younger. I think he moves better than Canelo.
Crawford's not.
And I think the other thing is that Canelo is not as sharp as he was maybe 3 years ago. Now, of course, he's still one of the best in the sport. But
I thought Canelo looked real sharp in his last fight, sharper than I had anticipated. But Crawford's not younger.
I thought, because some people thought that he carried, and maybe he did. He carried Munguia. Oh no, wait a minute. Who was the last guy he fought that he went the decision where rather than stop him? I think he's a Puerto Rican guy. I can't remember now who it was. Let me bring him up.
Well, why are you looking for that? I'll say this. First of all, Crawford's older, right? Crawford's 38. He may even be 39 by the time they fight in September. I think Bivol, you're right. I agree with Bivol.
Oh, Berlanga. Edgar Berlanga.
Berlanga really had no business being, and I thought that Canelo looked good in that fight, and I thought he was en route to a knockout when he dropped him early on. But Bivol, I think what we saw in Bivol is, he's a big guy compared to Crawford, but he's also a good boxer. And I think that's where, when you look at the fights that Canelo has, the guys that have given him the most trouble are the boxers, the guys that can move, the guys that won't let him, stand in front of him. They don't stand in front of him to let him be effective with his counterpunching, and
Absolutely.
Of course, work in the body. So I think Crawford's smart enough. I've used this comparison with fights in the past, but it seems like, I'll never forget the fights that Michael Spinks had with Larry Holmes. And, basically his plan that worked was to get in there and land a few shots and get out of harm's way. And that's what I see Crawford being able to do to Canelo. Because Canelo is going to try to, get him against the ropes so he can inflict his more powerful punches on him. I just don't think Crawford will do it. And I don't think Crawford will do something stupid in his last fight when he fought that Russian guy, MAGA something or other. Sorry, I know I'm going to get criticized for not pronouncing the name right, but Crawford didn't make a stupid mistake like making it a priority to go in for the knockout. He was happy with a decision, and I think that his mindset would be the same against Canelo.
Yeah, I think both of them would want to look as good as they possibly could. So I think in a situation like that, I think it makes for a really good fight. I think the reason why the Israel Madrimov fight, I think that. And
he's a good fighter. He's extremely underrated, and I think the lack of people knowing. I had seen him fight before, and I said on this show, this is not an easy fight for Crawford.
Yeah, I think that was the thing, is that I think Crawford was not that he was shocked or anything, but I think he was surprised in the sense that, wow, this guy is definitely giving me more fight than I expected.
Plus, he was taking everything that he dished out.
Yes. And I think his record alone did not suggest that he could. He was rather inexperienced. Didn't he only have like 11 fights or something? Or 10 fights?
Yeah.
So I think that was the other thing about it, was that, I don't give Crawford, I don't punish him for that. I think Crawford still dealt with what was in front of him and knew how to beat him. I don't think it was all that close. I think some people thought that because I remember hearing I forget who it was. Somebody on ESPN thought that was it Coppinger? Somebody thought that Madrimov, or maybe it was Tim Bradley, thought that Madrimov deserved the fight. I didn't. I thought Crawford beat him.
Well, I think the potential Crawford Canelo fight is a throwback fight, and the reason why
I think I think it's Coach. Yeah, Coach just said in the or a couple minutes ago in the
chat room
there that Crawford has the better feet, and I think he does. I think that's especially at this point in Canelo's career. He isn't seemed to be able to hasn't been able to close the gap the way he used to.
He's flat-footed. I think he's a flat-footed fighter.
And in terms of mileage, I mean, there's a lot of mileage on Canelo.
Certainly. And he fought. Listen, again, I'm not taking
15.
I'm not taking anything away from Canelo. He's fought a lot of tough fights. There's no question. But I do believe that this potential fight is a throwback fight. And what I mean by that is years ago, the reason of just proving that I'm better than you, weight classes meant nothing. I mean, look at Jack Johnson fighting Stanley Ketchel. I mean, it's actually comical to see footage of that and the size difference. So I like the fight. I hope it happens. And
I think it'll be a very close fight. It would be a pick'em fight, and I think it would be a huge event for the sport, which is good because let's face it, the biggest event in boxing this year was featured freaking Jake Paul and Mike Tyson.
Please, we got some comments in the chat room. My man, Batman Boxing and Boxing Mag, they're talking basically that they think Canelo's just going to destroy Crawford. I disagree. I really do. I mean, look, if he catches him, let's be real. If he catches Crawford, Crawford's going to go to sleep. Okay. But I just don't think that he's going to catch Crawford. And the mean streak that Crawford displays in boxing, it really, I can't compare. I don't even know another fighter that can turn that switch on and off the way Crawford can that I've seen. I'm looking forward to
it's Hagler-esque.
Right, I'm talking about now, though.
Other than you'd have to go like the very pinnacle of the sport, like an Inoue or an Usyk or something like that. But
Usyk he uses his brain. He doesn't really have
He doesn't have that meanness.
And Inoue now all of a sudden I'm seeing people are criticizing him that they're accusing him of taking the easy way. You see, when these smaller guys, everybody always wants them to move up, and they keep moving up, and then all of a sudden, physically, they can't compete anymore, and then they lose, and they say, "Yeah, you see, he wasn't that good." Nah, I mean, what's wrong with staying in a division that suits your body the best? But in any event, I love the fight. I hope it happens. Speaking of happening, Tyson Fury retired earlier this week. Most people are wondering. I've already gotten many emails. Is it for real? You think he's going to do it? Blah, 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 blah. The truth of the matter is I personally don't think he's going to stay retired, Alex. I think that the fight with Anthony Joshua in England is just too much money to walk away from. I think he's still butthurt over the decision against Usyk. I had that fight pretty much. Believe it or not, I did score it for Tyson Fury only because I thought that he did land more punches earlier in the fight. I've watched it again. My opinions changed a little. I mean, I look, it was not a robbery. He's talking about it being a robbery. He feels he was wronged. It wasn't a robbery.
He'll think that for the rest of his life, probably.
Well, I mean, the thing is that it wasn't a robbery. Okay, that's the bottom line. And
not.
Tyson Fury's perfect record, so to speak, is not an issue anymore. You would assume he doesn't need the money. He's been very successful financially. I just don't think we've seen the last of him. I think at least one more fight, and it has to be against Anthony Joshua, because that's the fight that a lot of us, not only the Brits, want to see. And this is why I always feel the British boxing scene is the best in the world, because the fan base does not care that both of these guys have lost and both of these guys have been, beaten up, and they still love their guys and they still want to see them fight.
Yeah, I think that fight, it would be sad if that never happens, but boxing, is replete with fights that we wanted and never got. So I guess I wouldn't be shocked either way. The thing that would surprise me is that they leave all that money on the table. And I think it's a chance to the attendance would be 95,000 people. And that's just,
right. Exactly.
That's just crazy to think that, that they'd give that up. So I think that I do think it will happen. I think, I worked with this kid yesterday who she kept talking about everybody likes being dramatic. She was this little fourth grader. And I think that's Tyson Fury is a perfect example of that. He likes being dramatic. So the idea of coming back from another retirement and fighting Anthony Joshua, he likes the sound of that. So I wouldn't be surprised if 6-7 months from now, he decides I'm coming out of retirement and I'm fighting Anthony Joshua.
I don't think he'd
money in the world, and we're going to fight him at Wembley, and and we'll hear all that hullabaloo about it, and it'll be an interesting fight. I think Fury beats him, but I think it could be an enjoyable fight. I hope it would be in England and not in Saudi Arabia.
Well, it's obviously going to be a competitive fight, because I disagree. I think AJ wins.
Oh, I would be rooting for AJ, but I just think, I don't know. I think AJ's a Humpty Dumpty, and you know the story of Humpty Dumpty.
Yeah.
They couldn't put him back together again, Bill.
He fought listen. When he fought Daniel Dubois, he demonstrated that it's like he forgot everything of boxing 101. He didn't know how to hold on. He tried to go mano a mano. I mean, he did everything wrong, but I give all the credit in the world to Daniel Dubois. And, Daniel Dubois is a fighter that I felt that they rushed him a little bit, and he got those losses, including the one against Usyk you referred to earlier. But I believe that he's the guy to watch now.
He's better for it. Yeah, he's better for having lost. And I think you're right. I agree. I mean, I think he's one of my fighters of the year. I mean,
well, I think he beats Usyk again.
Really?
In a rematch. You know why?
I'm very excited to see that, but he's got a couple. What is he? He has Joseph Parker to beat. I think he does beat Joseph Parker, even though that's not a gimme fight.
No, Parker's slick. Parker's slick. I love that card. That card is great.
Oh, that card's gonna be great. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I think that card is great. And I keep talking to my man Augie from Riverhead. And I tell you, I'm still leaning towards Beterbiev winning that rematch, and one of the reasons is, like what Augie said is, he says, well, I think Bivens going to come back and, correct the wrong and be better for it. Well, see, that's where I disagree. I think Bivol is Bivol. Bivol's a robot, and he fights the way he fights. And I think that Beterbiev started hurting him in that fight, and that's why he was on his heels, so to speak. I think that fight, when we see the rematch, and hopefully I'm wrong, but I think that fight, round 1 is going to be round 13, in my opinion. I think it's just going to pick up where the first one left off. I can't wait for it. But anyway,
and I think it's going to be more violent than the first one. The first one was like a high level chess match with bruises. I think this one is going to be meaner and nastier. And I agree with you. I like Beterbiev.
But neither one of them are going to change their style. Beterbiev is a guy that
break up the intensity.
Well, okay, maybe that's what I mean. Maybe start off like
to 11.
like Artur maybe starts round 13 the way he was fighting, rounds 8 through 12 in the first fight, but he had worn down Bivol in the first part of that fight, and he wasn't hurt. And the thing, John Scully said it on this show, and ever since then, I've noticed it more and more. I feel stupid that I really didn't notice it prior to him bringing it up on this show, but Artur Beterbiev has a great jab, and when you can jab a jabber and be equal to that, now the next set of skills come into play, right? And nobody could argue that Artur has the punching power, and once he was connecting, once he was being a little more aggressive, like you said, he'll turn it up a notch. I don't know.
Yeah, and he's a freak. I mean, the light heavyweights I've talked to about him, Chad Dawson and Charles Foster, two New Haven guys, they both say the same thing. He's frightening. Foster has sparred with him, and he hurts you with almost every shot. Both of them have talked about, both Dawson and Foster talked about his training being like crazy. Like he does push-ups on his knuckles, all kinds of this work ethic that is just otherworldly. I think he is one of the most frightening punchers in the sport.
And he's more fluid than people give him credit for.
I think
a lot of people look at him as a power puncher, as a I'm going to hunt you
and
down.
I think that you're doing him a disservice if you don't see, like you're saying, like if you don't see his boxing fundamentals, you're doing him a disservice.
I mean, consider this, Batman. Consider this. This is a guy that heard what it sounds like to go to the scorecards for the first time in his career against Bivol. None of his fights ended by decision prior to that fight. Yeah. So that fight is great, and that whole card is great. I can't wait for it. And of course, it's being brought to us by Turki Al-Rashid over there in Saudi Arabia, and which brings me to a point. It wasn't one of the things I want to talk about, but it makes me so damn nervous that he's, being basically taken over the sport of boxing, and everyone's letting him because of the checkbook and some of the things he says. I can't disagree. I mean, I saw some statements from him this morning. He's saying he's trying to re-educate boxing fans to accept losses and multiple losses, that it does not ruin the value. And I couldn't agree more. I've been saying that for about, 21 years now, So, my fear with him is that all of a sudden, if he loses interest, what's the repercussions going to be? Because everybody's like, all of a sudden, his best buddy. We're going to get to something in here in a minute that even hits that home. But before that, let me touch base real quick on this, and then we'll circle back to what I was starting to lead into. But I saw that Deontay Wilder is fighting Curtis Harper in a comeback fight. It's supposed to be happening in April 26th. Now, look, we all know that Wilder is basically on a losing streak. His record now, it's 43 wins, 4 losses, and a draw, with 42 of his wins coming by knockout. And I always thought he was a one-trick pony. He had one thing going for him, and that was a powerful right hand. No other skill. And he's demonstrated that in his most recent fights. I mean, all of his last 5 fights have all been, a full display of his lack of boxing ability. But Harper, who's 18-11, is a guy that, even though I believe that Deontay Wilder does not possess much boxing skill, what is a fight against Harper going to prove? I mean, he needs to fight somebody a little tougher than that, in my opinion. What's yours?
Well, I mean, I think the thing with him, it could be confidence that he needs to get back. To fight a guy that has a record that looks like a basketball team, maybe that's what he needs right now. I agree with you in the sense that I think that he's always gotten by on his power more than his skill. Absolutely, that's pretty easy to see. I guess most, some of his real big fans would maybe disagree, but I think that I don't know. That's why, to me, when people say that, Tyson Fury is an all-time great, I'm a little hesitant, because it's like, well, his biggest wins come over a guy who, he went life and death with Deontay Wilder. And I don't know, is a guy an all-time great if you do that? I don't know. He won, but I think Deontay Wilder, I think he's done.
Listen, I can't argue with that. I think he's done. And when he knocks out Harper, which he will, he's going to be bomb squad, acting like he just, beat somebody that is in a conversation,
Yeah, I mean, it could be that he needs the money. I mean, some of these guys, they spend quicker than they earn, And I think the other thing, and I think we saw that with Mike Tyson, I think that's one of the reasons why you're fighting when you're approaching 60 years old. It's like, to pay the federal income taxes, it's like, oh damn, I forgot again this year.
No, that's Floyd. That's Floyd, Floyd. But all right, back to Turkey Al-Rashid. I saw that it's going to be announced that they were talking about signing. Oh, can't wait to tell everybody. Ryan Garcia, can't wait to tell everybody who I'm going to fight. Well, rumor has it that. And they were all in England with Turkey Al-Rashid. Rumor has it that Ryan Garcia will be fighting Devin Haney again. And they have already set up a third fight too. Now, this is my point.
That's weird.
Well, you know what? First of all, look, I've maintained that I'm not a performance-enhancing drug specialist. I feel it's very hard to keep up with that, especially since, they put something on a banned list, and then, these guys whip up something else that's not on a banned list. And, until they can discover it, they can't put it on a banned list, But I think that whole thing was BS. I think that the traces of what was found with Ryan did not change it. And I think that this is a great opportunity for him. Part of the deal, from what I heard, is, he's going to have to go through the testing and all this stuff, but which he was already. But anyway, that's besides the point. But I think it's a great opportunity for both of these guys, Alex, because if Devin Haney can somehow win the fight, he could say, see, I told you. But Ryan is in the same position. Garcia could turn around and say, I told you guys, I'll beat him every time. And I've lost all respect for Devin Haney. I can't stand the crying. I can't stand the crying. If it is what it is. And I think that Ryan Garcia is showing that, he's a moneymaker in this sport. And Turkey Al-Rashid gets this to happen. What else can he do? I mean, this guy seems to be able to put together these fights, man.
Yeah, I mean, what that fight was this year, was that February of last year, of 2024?
I believe it will be a year.
So long ago.
Yeah, well, it's 9 months ago.
Okay,
April. It was in April.
Okay, April. So yeah, it was. I thought it was a great fight. I thought that Garcia surprisingly kicked his ass. Then to find out that he was on whatever he was on, it really it's soured the whole thing. And you're right. I mean, it is very hard to. When you said banned list, I thought you meant like, is he talking about the Rolling Stones, Rush, and the Who? Who's he talking about? But so yeah, it is very hard to keep track of what's up with these performance enhancing drugs. But it seems very clear that he was on something because of not because of his performance, but because of the failed tests, and his excuses just were ridiculous.
Whose excuses? Haney's?
No, Garcia's excuse. His excuses of how he was clean, him insisting he was clean, and that it's the tests. Well, I don't buy that.
he's
I think
alluding
he's
to he's alluding to a big setup. I mean, that's
yeah. I don't buy that at all. Oh, because he even said that because didn't he said that the test came after he was in a photo with Donald Trump. So it was like people were trying to get him. It's like, give me a break, dude. It's not who's in your Instagram. It's what was in your urine. So I do think that I think it's a tough fight for Devin Haney because obviously, Garcia put a whooping on him.
And he's going to do it again.
I was very surprised. Well, that's the sort of weird thing about performance enhancing drugs. Was it that he didn't have to have the struggle with the weight because the drugs aided him? I don't know. So it is a fight that I could see seeing a rematch. It's kind of weird to think that they have agreed to 2 more fights. The guys can't stand each other.
Well, that's part of, from what I heard, is that part of it, and they both already signed a preliminary deal, from what I heard, with them. But part of it is,
I think Devin Haney needs it more because
I do. Listen,
so bad. I mean, he got beat up
bad, and I don't think
I'm sorry.
I
Go
think
ahead.
Devin Haney isn't as good. Look, I never liked Devin Haney. Then the fight prior to the Ryan Garcia fight, I said, you know what? Maybe Devin Haney. Maybe I'm a little too hard on Devin Haney. And I started saying, well, he is a good boxer. He's this, he's that. Let's see. And then he was scheduled to fight, and he fought Ryan Garcia. And then after that fight, to me, Haney was just destroyed. And if everybody wants to blame it on the PEDs, fine. Now this is why I like the fight, because now both guys have a chance to prove the other one wrong. But part of the deal, not only with a extensive anti-doping testing leading up to it, the projected fight is in October, so that means the ban would be over for Ryan Garcia, and one of the other stipulations was that they kind of had to shake hands and give each other a hug and let's move on, because of the hatred between both camps. So I think money in boxing, money solves all problems. I mean, not
just for boxing.
Yeah, well, hey, listen, I don't know about that, but it certainly could solve some problems for me.
Because I think that's the thing about that makes me that I'm surprised that they're going to do the 2 fights, because it just seemed like Haney's father. First of all, with his father, I'm surprised his father didn't pull Haney out of the fight because Haney was getting so badly beaten up. I thought he would have stopped it. I forget what round he was getting murdered. Maybe the 10th. I forget what round it was, but
I think it was the 8th.
He was really getting hammered and like flipping and flopping all over the place. And I really thought, wow, how could his dad not stop it? His dad, his dad can't stand, the Garcia camp. So I'm surprised they're willing to, but maybe that's the power of this Turk Al-Sheikh, is that, he's able to get these guys to sit down and agree to things because of the money that's involved.
Exactly. When you look and you say, look at all them zeros. He's my buddy. It's all been an act. We're not again. Because remember, these guys have a history going back into the amateurs, And,
right. And I think that's one of the things with Turk Al-Sheikh is that I agree with you, is that I'm enjoying the fact that he's doing what he is for boxing now. I appreciate it. And I do think that it's going well. What happens when he decides that's enough?
Exactly. Exactly. Look at all the promoters that are in bed with him right now.
Yeah. And that's not to say, because I do agree with the Larry Merchant adage that, you can't save boxing and you can't kill it. But we have seen, really famine times. So I think if he is to walk away, it would be a famine for a while until somebody else, brings it back.
Well, the best thing that he could accomplish, money aside and making great fights aside and all of that, the best thing he could accomplish is what I saw recently when he was saying, and he used the UFC as an example, where these fighters don't lose value if they lose a fight. if they're in a big fight and it's a competitive fight and you come out on a losing end, there's no shame. And the value of that fighter should not go down.
Well,
And realistically,
I like. I like
okay,
that a lot.
well, I love it because the realistic part of that statement is that's what it used to be like. It used to be like that when you had 8 divisions and only 10 top 10 fighters in 8 divisions. You know, now you got guys that all of a sudden magically appear, and then that champion is ordered to fight that magically appearing contender. You know, and that bothers me. You know, what bothers me is all the belts. You know, there's more fighters, with belts than there are without belts. You know, so
quite honestly, the thing that bothers me is the whole His Excellency. I'm the kind of guy that believes everybody is no better and no worse than anybody else. Why do we have to call him His Excellency?
Because you're in Saudi Arabia, and people keep forgetting that they don't really like us too much. You know, they really don't. They really don't. Somebody asked me, hey, Billy C, if you ever had a chance to go over there and do a show or do your show there, would you do it? And my initial answer was, yeah, I would go. And then I was thinking about it, and I'm saying, with my luck, that's when something would happen. Now, Triber and all these other Americans go there, no incident, at all,
Yeah, I mean, I would love to visit someday, but I one of the things I hate is long plane rides. So to me, it's like if there was a teleport, I'm there.
Well, not only do I don't like any plane rides anymore. I mean, I'll get on a plane to go there, but all the funky rules, it just seems, I don't know. It seems like it seems like I would end up in some Saudi Arabia prison over there. I don't know. You
don't want to. Yeah, you don't want to get your head cut off.
I was just gonna say, I don't want to be introduced to a guillotine. You know what I mean? Look at the wrong.
No, they use the sword. They use a sword.
Yeah, themselves. But I don't want to. Hey, check out the legs of that covered up lady over there. No, you can't do that. But
well, have you noticed? I think Oscar De La Hoya and his wife are like really skirting right around the edge, and I mean skirting right around the edge of a lot of those rules. Some of the outfits that she's worn, I'm surprised they didn't get in trouble.
I don't know how people can pay attention to the fights when she walks into the ring, but anyway, last thing I wanted to touch base on was the fight that's coming up in a couple of weeks. David Benavidez and going up against David Morrell. And, Benavidez, we talked about it earlier. A lot of people criticize Canelo for not fighting Benavidez. And all of a sudden, the reasons, that people were given why he needed to fight him and everything. I think everybody started missing the truth about David Benavidez. Yes, he's big. Yes, he's young. But he's not that good, and I say that, I say I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm just saying he's not polished, and I think this fight against David Morrell is really a true test. I mean, when you look at Benavidez, he's 29-0. He's only 28, 6'2". He's a big guy. No amateur career. I didn't realize that. He really has no amateur career. And his best wins, really, Khalid Plant, which was impressive, a 12-round decision in March of 23. He stopped Demetrius Andrade. I know you're still crying about that one, November of 23. And his last fight against Alexander Vodzatic in June, a 12-round decision. I mean, those were his best wins. And Morrell, and by the way, he's the interim WBC champ. And Morrell, he's just as much. I mean, he's the WBA regular. Don't be confused with exceptional, just a regular light heavyweight world champion. He's only got 11 pro fights, 11-0 with 9 knockouts, but he's just as young, 26 years old, right around the same height, 6'1", and he's a southpaw, a Cuban fighter, but he doesn't have 3 big wins like Benavidez has. I only see 2 of his 11 fights that I would even comment on. He stopped Senya Agbeko in the second round in 2023, and he won a 12-round decision over Rad Kaldazavik in 2024. But I like this fight. I think it's going to be a good test, Alex. I think Morrell is not, especially with the Cuban background, he's gonna show Benavidez something. And I know Khalid Plant can box too, but I think he's going to introduce something. I think we're going to get a better gauge of how good Benavidez is against David Morrell. What's your thoughts on that fight?
I agree, because I think the 11 fights of Morrell is deceiving because he had a very deep amateur career. He had over 50 fights as an amateur. He was way on the winning side of that, and he only lost a few times, handful of times. And losing in the amateurs is very different than losing in the pros. Like you said, he's a Cuban, so he's got incredible pedigree with that Cuban national team. So I think in terms of skill, it's definitely going to be a difficult fight for Benavidez. You can throw out the 11 fights. It looks like there's a huge gap in experience, but because of the depth of the amateur experience, it's not. It's a deceiving gap. So I do think that you're right. I think if Benavidez handles him easily, then I think, that's really good news for Benavidez, because it shows that he is for real. If Morrell upsets him, I don't think it would be a huge upset, because I think Benavidez is big and strong, so I think that's gonna. But like you said, the age. It's neither one of them, it's negligible. They're the same age, right? Did you say
they're 2 years apart?
Okay, yeah.
So Morrell's 26 and Benavidez is 28. But I think
he's slightly younger, but
and slightly shorter. But I think if Morrell beats Benavidez, that's going to support Canelo. Canelo's going to be like, see, I told you guys, he's not that good,
right?
But if he destroys Morrell. He is a power puncher. If he knocks out Morrell, I got to give him credit, because Morrell's a good boxer. Plus, he does display power. And, Cuban fighters are talented. There's no question about that. Generally they are. So I don't know. I like the fight. And, of course, we'll break it down more when the time comes. But in any event, any final thoughts, Alex?
I will just say that a lot of people are saying that I guess a few people did pick the first Usyk versus Fury fight as fight of the year. I kind of thought, as much as there was the tremendous drama that 9th round, I thought that the second fight there was more consistent action. Both guys were busier. I kind of
there was no fooling around in the second fight.
Yeah, I thought the second fight didn't have the drama of the first, but I thought the second fight was more action. And I think that we should mention just something about, and it was something I wanted to mention because I'll remember you interviewed Steve Farhood a few years ago, and he said something that I think is definitely, if you're a fan of this sport, it's something to pay attention to. Fighters, first of all, good fighters are great liars. And one thing that fighters always will say is, I just had a great camp. I take everybody seriously. I had a great camp. The thing is, Farhood pointed out that that's not true, that fighters train to the level of what they expect. And we saw a perfect example of that this year in the Munguia-Bruno Saras fight. Munguia thought that was going to be an easy homecoming night in Tijuana. He got upset. That was the upset of the year. A guy who was looked on paper like a feather-fisted guy knocked him out. And I think part of why he knocked him out, he caught him beautifully with a right hand that he didn't see. But he couldn't get up. And that's conditioning. He could not get up. Remember, this is a guy who got up against Canelo. He couldn't get up against Bruno Saras. And I think that that's a good example of what Steve Farhood said, is that Munguia trained to what he expected, not thinking, I got to train as hard as I always do. I got to train like this guy could be the death of me. And he trained to the level of what he thought, and look what happened. And
that fight shocked me. I was one of the few people that thought Munguia was gonna win the fight. I just thought he did, and the way that unfolded, I agree. It just seemed like, uncharacteristically, it seemed like he was not prepared, and subsequently, and then he lost again. After
And so much credit to Saras too, because think about it, he got off the deck to do that.
No, I know
He was hurt,
know.
and yeah, impressive.
Yeah, I mean, to be a guy that people were actually talking about potentially, getting to that 50, to a guy that loses back-to-back fights and in devastating fashion. Wow. But anyway, Alex, thanks for joining us, and thank everybody. I want to thank everybody. This is our first show in our 22nd year. And hopefully we'll continue it. I don't want to sound like Tyson Fury. Alex already said I'm right up there with Fury and Sugar Ray Leonard with saying I'm going to retire. But it is what it is. But I do want to mention to everybody, visit our website, BillyCBoxing.com. Click on the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame logo, which is right on the right-hand side, and get yourself the tickets and join us June 20th, 21st, and 22nd. I'm part of the 2025 class. I'm extremely happy and honored for it. And they do a great 3-day event. So support that. And I appreciate it. So everybody, until next week, make sure you tune in. Same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, I'll leave you with this. Ciao, baby. Have a good one. Alex, take care, my man.
Take care, Billy C.